You'll never be able to guess what kind of game Winter Survival is. Okay, perhaps it's a bit self-descriptive. It's a hardcore survival RPG where you have to tough it out in the harsh winter wilderness conditions. This game just released as a demo for Steam Next Fest, and I played it all the way through. And despite some of its indie jank, the game is actually a deep, engrossing experience that takes a lot of inspiration from other games and throws in some new originality. Let's check it out. Now, if I had to try and sum up Winter Survival in a single sentence, I'd say it's The Long Dark meets Firewatch, but in Unreal Engine 5's visual glory. It's got a deep survival system with extensive crafting and base building mechanics, all of which are essential for staying alive in the game. And there's also narrative elements giving you purpose to explore the world. And visually, Winter Survival has kind of that new trademark indie but also good-looking Unreal Engine 5 charm. The production value is a lot higher than I'm used to for games like this, and I think it does a lot to create an immersive atmosphere for you to quite literally get lost in. The vistas are expansive and really well stylized. The mundane objects and resources that you gather are still vibrantly detailed, and everywhere you turn there's something gorgeous to look at. Even if the landscapes themselves also serve as a constant reminder that the frigid environment is also trying to kill you. Now, not every area of this game looks good, and I'll get into more of that a bit later in the video, but generally there's been a clear effort by the developers to reach the highest level of quality within their reach. Now, currently the game's demo is free on Steam, and it's launching into a paid early access on February 28th, so most likely what you experience in the demo will be pretty similar to the early access product. Now, a core element of all survival games is to immerse yourself in the world. If you don't feel connected to the environment and the gameplay that you're put into, it's kind of tough finding the motivation to really take it seriously and want to survive in it. The Long Dark is an exceptional game and maybe one of the most refined survival games available today, but its heavy stylization can be a bit immersion breaking at times, and it can really pull you out of the experience when you're supposed to be starving to death. Compare that to the environmental art of Winter Survival, and I'm totally sold. It truly looks like the wilderness, and it makes me feel the connection with my goals of surviving instantly. Now, before you start your journey in Winter Survival, you have to pick a difficulty setting. The demo currently offers two, which are basically easy and normal mode, and a third tier of difficulty will become available later. There's also 3 modes to play: Story, Endless, and Cold Wave. Endless is the only one available in the demo. Cold Wave will be more of a brutal survival scenario with harsher weather, and if you're interested in what story mode offers, you can actually check out the Winter Survival Prologue, which the developers released as a narrative prequel to this title. There's also a tutorial that introduces you to the game's core mechanics. Now, once you select the difficulty and mode, you're then presented with 5 distinct choices that affect your permanent affliction, gear, weather, starting time of day, and what wildlife is most threatening to your survival. And while these choices are essentially just gameplay modifiers, they are presented with a little bit more of narrative flair that gives your character some backstory as well. It's nothing too elaborate, but it is a nice touch that gives the game a choose-your-own-adventure vibe. And once you make your choices, the game throws you into the world and basically lets you survive. And first, you really need to learn how to manage your afflictions. The first one is the permanent affliction that you choose. For the demo, there's really only one option right now: a respiratory infection that you need medicine for. And when the medicine wears off, the infection starts chipping away at your health until, well, you eventually die. You'll need to find medicine hidden throughout the world to keep your sickness in check. The other rogue element is your sanity. Various mechanics in the game have a negative impact on your overall sanity, which causes a buildup of trauma. And if you reach 100% trauma, well, when you sleep, you'll be given negative status effects, which you'll have to complete in-game challenges to try and remove. These negative effects can start off as things like lowering your maximum health, but if you don't take care of them, they can ramp up to things including animal hallucinations and even making crafting much harder. To manage your sanity, you basically have to maintain your health and nutrition, as well as avoiding things like lingering around aggressive animals and freezing conditions. It's a fairly interesting game mechanic that feels unique and also very appropriate for this genre. Now, there's also sprinkles of narrative elements like handwritten notes directing you to specific areas of a level, and voiceovers that kick in at key moments to give you a sense of background for your character. Now, as for how you actually manage surviving, there's a lot of systems at play, but they're all based on pretty logical stuff. You need food, water, heat, and dry clothes. You can scavenge canned foods or hunt for sustenance. Water is available at freshwater streams. Indoor areas like caves and shelters are warmer than outdoors, but you can also make fires to help warm yourself up. They can also warm your food, which increases their nutritional value, which also decreases their impact on your body temperature. I find it cool that they added all this extra nuance to the survival mechanics, which make a ton of sense. Also, you can hang your clothes out to dry if you happen to fall into a body of water. There's some secondary mechanics like stench and status effects caused by alcohol or uncooked food. The demo level has some hot springs that you can bathe in to clean yourself up without reducing your body temperature, which is nice. And unless you really feel like, say, drinking whiskey, you can, for the most part, avoid the ill effects of most edible items. And I gotta say, all of these mechanics are extremely well integrated with each other and just feel like logical actions that you'd have to make in this situation. If you're cold, you build a fire, but fires burn fuel, so you need to add wood or other combustible material. And if you're out of wood, you can burn wood bowls or sticks, but if you burn all your materials, then you won't have enough to craft survival gear with. And if you don't put your fire out, it'll burn up all your fuel that you give it, so you have to remember to put it out when you're not using it. And if you sleep without a fire to keep warm, it'll make you cold, which affects your overall health. All of these mechanics are explained very well, they seem straightforward, and they really add to the immersion. You survive in the way that you would expect to survive, and the things you collect, gather, or achieve benefit you in the ways that you would expect them to. And this is one of my favorite aspects of the game. The mechanics are all fundamentally grounded in reality, and it doesn't seem like they're really forgetting much. So not only do the visuals completely sell the environment, but the mechanics don't break that immersion. So you feel like you're surviving rather than collecting 10 foods to survive. And once you realize that all the in-game mechanics make tons of sense and there isn't much fluff to it, it becomes a much more raw, almost visceral-like survival experience. Now, most of your time in Winter Survival is going to be spent exploring and gathering resources. It's a well-established gameplay loop that seems decently balanced and has enough environmental space and variety to keep it interesting. But then there's combat. Look, it's a free demo of an upcoming early access game made by a small team with limited resources for a project that's, well, pretty ambitious. I'm not here to harp on them for trying to make a game that's beyond their means, but it does seem clear that their animal AI and combat systems are in need of some significant work. Where the survival stuff is totally logical and immersive, the combat feels like kind of a tedious QuickTime event sequence of holding the right buttons to fill up meters. And that's assuming the animals aren't glitching through walls, getting stuck in the terrain, or just generally bugging out and doing weird stuff like disappearing entirely. Basically, I'm 100% sold on the survival experience until I have to fight a wolf or kill a deer, and then it completely breaks the immersion. It's an interesting juxtaposition of game design where the environment and ideas for the game are all top-notch, but the animations and combat gameplay kind of fall short. And those are, frankly, some of the hardest things to do convincingly, especially for an indie team, and I feel like if they could nail those elements, the overall production quality for this game would feel so much higher. There are also some areas visually, like caves, that just don't look quite as good as the rest of the environment that could use some upgrading with some of their flat textures and lighting. Now, the game is launching in early access at the end of the month, so it's possible it might be somewhat improved, but it's a lot of improvement on that front that it will be needed. If anything, just reducing the amount of wildlife in the world seems like it would be a good starting point, because pretty much everywhere you go, there seems to be a group of wild animals to run into, which if you've ever been in, a forest or the wild, you'll know that that's not particularly realistic. Obviously, we need animals for gameplay, but I think the balance is a bit more on the Far Cry side, where it could use a bit more of Hunter Call of the Wild type mechanics, or at least a better balance of in between the hardcore and the more arcade. Now, in all honesty, I enjoyed Winter Survival immensely, outside of the combat stuff. It feels so grounded, so logical, and so realistic without being bogged down by the endless tedium revolving around gamey mechanics. The developers seem to have struck a really nice balance between the mechanics to make you feel threatened by the circumstances that the environment presents, rather than by the ability to memorize inventory items and their perceived value. The fact that the game is also incredibly visually impressive with the Unreal Engine is a very nice bonus feature. Overall, I totally dig the vision for this game, and it just has those janky mechanics that could be ironed out down the road, which I hope the devs do. If you guys enjoyed this video, leave me a like, subscribe for more content, like it, and hit that notification bell to beat the YouTube algorithm with me. Also, let me know in the comments what games you've been playing for Steam Next Fest. And up next, check out my list of the best games you can play for $15 or less. I think you guys would be surprised by just how good some of those games can be. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.